Hello and welcome to this episode of Community Connections, airing right here on OROMIA11. I am your host, Anna Orr. And today we are talking about advocating for Kids Incorporated with the Executive Director and Founder, Cheryl Poe. We're going to be talking about advocacy for your children in the public school system, some tools you can use, as well as cultural responsive advocacy. This is going to be a wonderful episode you won't want to miss. Welcome to the program, Cheryl.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Now, we are talking about advocating for kids who are neurodivergent in the public school system today.
Yes, yes.
Can you
That
talk?
is that is the centerness of my company. Yes.
Okay. Can you talk to me about what gave you the vision for advocating for kids?
Yeah, that's a really deep question because there's a lot of pieces to that. I think the first piece about that is my own personal journey that I had to walk through to support my children that were neurodivergent in public schools, Black and males. And the struggle, the fight, the racism, the ableism, the sexism that I had to literally walk through to get to the other side of being able to get my child related services that he needed so he could learn to speak, getting individualized educational programs, getting assistive technology to help him let people know what he knew was it left such a heavy burden on me and emotions of anger, just to be to be honest,
Mhm.
that I felt like if I didn't use that energy for something positive, that I would get sick or that I would not ever be able to get over the trauma that I experienced. So the vision came out of pain, but the idea of it was, wow, um, there are no Black special education advocates in my Tidewater area at the time that I started. There was no one that understood the different and the important pieces of what it means to be Black in public educations in school. So the vision became, how do I give other parents the resources, the hope, an option to instead of giving up and giving in. So the vision behind it was it came out of anger, but turned into for love for my community and belief that just because you're Black or just because you're neurodivergent doesn't mean you don't deserve the best equal quality education in public schools.
Now, forgive me just a little bit. We're going to backtrack because we're using the word neurodivergent, and many people don't even know what that word means. And they hear it, and then they immediately are like, no, I'm not neurodivergent. I don't know anyone who's neurodivergent. And you and I both know that can't be true with the statistics being what they are.
Exactly, right? Neurodivergence is everybody, right? It's the idea of this, right? That how your brain works, right? It is different than the norm, right? So they do standardized tests. They have these boxes of what represents a normal person, a person whose cognitive abilities are within a standard of what they've decided was normal. If your mind is outside that box, then you're considered neurodivergent, right? Now it's a spectrum too. Like there's levels of it. There are people that are probably neurodivergent that have been able to self accommodate throughout their life. So it's never really been an issue for them from the perspective of they needed to seek support or they needed medication or they needed help. But they knew in their minds something was a little bit different about them, right? That they kind of knew just enough that I'm not quite like that, but I can still maneuver through all the systems that I have to maneuver through to be successful. I mean, that's one area. To an area of where a person is just really cognitively delayed and isn't even able to perhaps communicate for themselves. So it's just how your brain is functioning. And if it doesn't fit within the standards that are set up in our society, which, is a problem all by itself, then you're neurodivergent.
Now, according to the CDC, which is the Center of Disease Control, 15 to 20% of the population is neurodivergent.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
large number to think
It
about as a
is.
whole. And for
It
a
really
long
is.
time, like I said before, we often didn't hear about people being neurodivergent. We started hearing more
Right.
and more about autism, about ADD, ADHD, and so many
Yeah.
others, but people don't necessarily equate the two to be synonymous, and it's kind of
Right.
starting to become normalized now.
Yes, it is. And I think the language has a lot to do with it because before people were considered you have a disability. And I still use that terminology, right? And probably just because that's what I've known for the last 25 years. However, the word neurodivergent I think is a better descriptor, right? Than just being disabled. Disabled at times has that negative connotation to it that you can't do. But when you look at the neurodivergent is more about the development and how the brain functions and works, and it leaves room for people to be on a spectrum of how we access our cognitive and use our cognitive abilities.
You are actively advocating for kids in the public school system. What has that experience been like?
Ooh. Well, I've learned so much, and it's been difficult at times because it's a system that is not it's never been built. Public education has never been about or never devised for Black students. It was never built for students with disabilities. So when you have that intersectionality of being Black and disabled, you have a double whammy against you in a system. And public schools um, nowadays are they're failing our children, and it's parents literally have to hire people like me or bring people in like me just to sometimes get their kids the basics that they should be getting anyway. Everyone forgets that every state in America gets funding from the federal government to educate students with disabilities. That's to provide related services for speech and language therapy in the school, occupational therapy, if kids need help with writing or some daily living skills, sensory skills. They have the money, they get the money. The problem is the money doesn't seem to be trickling down to the resources that the kids really need to be successful. And parents that advocate, right? Parents that go into our public schools and they advocate and they know their rights get better results for their children. So, unfortunately, we live in a system that if you're not able to advocate for your child, there's a good chance your child's special education, IEP services, or Section 504 services aren't even really addressing the needs that will help your child be successful once they graduate. So it's difficult. It's difficult knowing that, you have a systems of people that are in the system that we're told, right? When you're a general education person, you can be like, oh, teachers are great, teachers are wonderful, educators are here for us. When you have a child with a disability, it doesn't feel like that all the time. It feels more so like your child's being blamed or you're being blamed for your child's behaviors. It's like this big disconnect of understanding that if the child's special ed, you need to have a certain level of empathy that I notice is almost non-existent in our public schools nowadays.
In your work, how are you able to reduce the stigma around talking about having a child with a disability or a child that is neurodivergent? Because I know so many of us, specifically culturally, shy away from any type of label. And we know that we've experienced uncles, aunts, and so many other relatives that are a little quirky or maybe present a little differently than societal norms. And we just brush it off instead of addressing what their needs are.
Well, that's why I was so excited to be here with you because one of the ways that we address those stigmas is we have these live conversations. We have these open conversations. And one of the things I don't mind sharing with you and my audience is that I'm neurodivergent. I grew up with an IEP. I wasn't reading on grade level in elementary school or middle school, towards high school, I guess, because I got good services. And my parents supplemented that. I was able to thrive. I then, once in college, right, got diagnosed with my ADHD, which explains some of the behavior things I used to get in trouble for when I was younger. But I think one of the first pieces is we need to do is those of us who are neurodivergent, be proud about that. Be proud about we survived, we succeeded, even though there was a stigma living through that. And once we start sharing that, having a disability or being neurodivergent doesn't mean you can't still give so much to your community or society and start using those tools. Because I believe some of my neurodivergent tools have helped me be able to be a really good advocate. So I think representation, right? Seeing people like, us that are out here having this conversation and celebrating the success that we're able to do around our neurodivergent. And then I think the other pieces is just giving information like you're doing now. Like, let's break down the myth of what a disability means, or let's talk about, like, your first question. I loved it. What is neurodivergent? Like, giving information to the community and letting them know it's okay, and that you're not alone, and that being neurodivergent doesn't mean you can't be successful in life. I think
One of
that's how
my
we break this thing down.
one of my favorite phrases that I keep hearing over and over is representation matters because it is proof that we exist.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And thriving. Not only are we exist, I mean, we're thriving. Look at us. We're here. We're doing things. I'm giving back to my community. We are there, and there are lists. People can Google like neurodivergence and see who famous neurodivergent people are. You'd be surprised. A lot of our powerful people have some kind of, like you say, quirky difference in their
Mm-hmm.
brain. And I think that we need that. That's how we expand and become, excuse me, expand and learn new things and think of new ideas. You need that creativity, right?
Absolutely. Now, share with me about the work of cultural responsive advocacy and what that looks like.
Ooh, yeah. Well, our public education is based on white supremacy um, concepts, belief systems. So, of course, within the special education world, which is housed within the system of education, you have those same kinds of mindsets about children with disabilities if they're Black. In fact, for a long time, special education was used to get rid of Black kids out of predominantly white schools, right? To get them out of the classrooms. So where we are now in our lives, as is that culturally responsive means that I, at least when I'm advocating for my clients that are of color, that we acknowledge and we force the system to acknowledge that in Virginia, right? I do the East Coast, but and I know the stats for most states, but I'm just going to use Virginia as an example. They only make up about 12%. Black students make up 12% of the overall population, and there's like 1 million students there.
Wow.
However, they make up to anywhere between 48 and 50% of students who are suspended from school, right? So culturally being responsive is recognizing that we as Black neurodivergents, if you have a child going to school in Virginia, your chances of being suspended are greater than your chances of graduating. Your chances of being in low performing classrooms are greater than you being evaluated and provided twice exceptional services because you're gifted and have a disability, right? You're 3 times more than likely to be suspended based on something that maybe your white counterpart did and didn't get suspended. So culturally responsive is one aspect of protecting, right, and verbalizing at that meeting during and making it very clear that we know the odds are against us as Black students with disabilities trying to seek services? What protections are you going to be put in place to make sure that these disparities don't spill over into the needs of the student, right? That's just one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is when we're looking at IEP goals, especially around social emotional, cultural behavior, we want to make sure that the IEP goals that they are developing to teach our children how to interact work not only in school, but also work in the community, which where they're coming from, right? We have to code switch. We have to do that. So our services, when we're looking at teaching kids social skills and social interaction skills, they need to make sense, yes, in school to meet certain expectations, but they also need to fit the culture of the individuals. In some cultures, it is disrespectful to be staring in the eye, making eye-to-eye contact with an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need to ask that family, is this something that your family allows before you just put it on an IEP? So it's recognizing in short terms, those were examples. But to sum it up, it is just making sure that the culture of the individual, of the child, of the family, of the community are represented in the services that your child is receiving on their IEP.
The first thing that comes to mind when we're having this conversation immediately is this sounds like this is giving another opportunity to interrupt the school to prison pipeline.
Oh, yes.
Pushing our
Yes.
kids out and saying these
Yes.
are behavior issues, or this child needs to be suspended, or we're not equipped to support this. And you just shared schools are receiving federal funding to address these needs, and hopefully
Yes.
giving them a better opportunity at thriving versus doing away with them at such an early age when you can actually help them exist in the space of an educational school system.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that is exactly it. Part of it is protecting our children from that school to prison pipeline. Because when your child does have the IP and you know your rights, there are certain things that they have to do before they remove your child, right? They got to prove that they gave their child the services that they were supposed to receive. They have things that they have to go through the process. So yes, it does. Yes, 100%. I'm so glad you made that connection.
You shared a little bit about what you do working with your clients. Talk to me about the framework of what you do.
So, because I've been doing this for a while, like I said, over about 25 years now, I've kind of like switched a little bit.
Okay.
Like I think the first 10 years is like just getting your understanding the system, the processes, what you can do, what you have out there, what capacity you have. Now I'm at a stage of where I know how to use the resources that we have when needed to file systemic complaints. Because my first framework is this is individual, let me just work on this child. And then I realized in my work that, wait a minute, this is systemic. These are the same things that are happening over and over and over and over again. This is not a coincidence. So I like to look at systemic issues more. I have filed complaints against whole school districts for systemic violations of a free and appropriate education because, from that perspective, even if each case doesn't get a win, which luckily they did, the fact that someone's coming in to look at the whole school district system, right, puts them on notice. For the state of Virginia, I partnered with another advocate, and we filed an Office of Civil Rights complaint against the whole state of Virginia for shutting down and not providing services to students that had certain disabilities during the COVID time. Now, with our change in government, I don't know if that's still going to go through, but that's a current investigation. I filed complaints with the Justice Department against one of the school districts that I work with down here for racial discrimination and again, disability discrimination because of some of the things that they were doing were horrible. So I think my framework went from really working on individual cases a lot, like focusing on that, to still providing those direct services to parents, but also looking at what can I do to attack systemic issues when I see them, and how can those systemic results make change for the whole district and everyone moving forward.
You talked a little bit about what's currently happening with the United States government. What has been the response from your clients and from parents and you yourself as a parent about maybe what's potentially to come for the students you've been supporting thus far?
Well, a lot. I would say the community, and I'm going to say the Black neurodivergent community that I'm plugged into overall is just really nervous. Like, what does all this mean? Like, trying to get some grounding on what is the current law around it, like services, and then what are the possibilities of what's going to happen, right? So at first, my whole thing was, guys, we're good. You don't have to worry about it because anybody that has an IEP, they're in the school this year, they're going to be okay. I did not anticipate as many quick changes that have been made, like in 17 states in that have filed, whose attorney generals have tried to sue, I guess, U.S. Department of Education or someone to get rid of Section 504. That is a very dangerous thing, right? That they tried to put it underneath the idea of allowing transgender protections fall under Section 504, but then they also added and get rid of Section 504 for students with disabilities. So it, there's so many unknowns right now. It is hard to get footing. And when you don't know what to expect, it can cause anxiety. So what I'm just telling parents to do is right now, just continue to fight and make sure that the services that your child are getting now are being implemented. And as far as what they can do to address any political changes that occur, about removing sped ed services, that they can't sit on the sideline. They're gonna have to get involved. They're gonna have to start talking to their own Congress representatives and their senators, because that's the only way they're going to be able to protect the supports that our children are currently getting. So it's going to be a tough, I'd say, 4 years coming up. But I do believe that the community, the disability community, has to come together, and we have to make our voices heard that, we're not going to let you take away services for our children.
What has been the community response to the work of advocating for kids?
Parents love it, school districts hate it. Right? It's because I'm a disruptor, I'm a disruptor of the system. So parents are happy to have, representation. Black parents are happy to have somebody that looks like them, that can fight for them in settings where we oftentimes don't exist. Walking into an IEP meeting with a family that's Black and I'm Black and 14 other people are white, but still having a voice that has to be heard and respected. Parents love that. I think school districts, ones that are used to just doing the status quo, right? Oh, this is what we always do. This is how we've always done it. Those particular school districts take issue because I'm forcing them to be different. I'm forcing them to actually follow what the regulatory requirements are and what's in the best interest of the student versus we've always done that. And then there are some school districts that yes, let's work together, let's collaborate, let's figure this out. What can we do, to make this work? But not that many of them. A few, but not many.
Now, you said that you are supporting and advocating for all children. Are the materials that you work with or that you are presenting to parents linguistically diverse for them to understand what's going on with their
That's
kids?
that's a really good question. That's an excellent question. So when it comes to being linguistically competent or compliant, that for me that does become a little bit more difficult. Um, and and I know within our school systems that they have to provide documentation in the native tongue of the parents, right? So I can help families get that in
Mm-hmm.
place. However, I myself, as far as me developing materials from different language kinds of being able to have more than one language other than English, I admit that my role in that is minimum. But I do advocate for those kinds of resources and accommodations that families who English is a second language to, that happens. I advocate and bring in translators because parents have a right to have a translator in that IEP meeting with them so that they can communicate and understand the processes and actually give informed consent. Their paperwork has a right to be in their language to some degree. Their rights have to be in their language. So there are regulatory pieces that I do support and advocate for that particular group that has that need.
I think that is so important that you shared that it is your right to have documentation in your native tongue. I think oftentimes
Yes.
parents come into spaces, and if you're outside of the world of education, you don't know what all the acronyms stand for. Some of the words don't make sense. And
Right.
so you're trying to advocate for your child, and you're going,
Yeah.
all of this is flying over my head, so I can't catch up
Yeah.
to start to then, in
Exactly.
turn, request things that support their scholar.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. And there's another thing that parents can request that they don't know about. It's called parent training. So in a situation like that where a parent maybe is going in by themselves, and even if they give them a translated procedural safeguard that has all their rights in it, if the parent still is having some issues with understanding what that means, that parent has every right to say, you know what, I need some parent training. I need you to send me someplace to train me to understand this. Because one of the things about IDEA, a parent has a significant role, right? They're not supposed to have IEPs without the parent. In our state, the parent has to sign all the IEPs in order for services to be implemented. Across the United States, the parents have to at least sign the first IEP, right, to initiate the services. So parents have to be informed. They have a right to know what it is they're signing, what it is they're agreeing to. They need to understand what they can do if they disagree with what the school is recommending, because they have rights to dispute that. So yes, it is really important to have it in language that they understand and then ask for additional support and training.
Now, for someone that is watching this and is saying, I am not in
Mhm.
Virginia, but I would love the support of
Oh,
advocating for kids,
yeah.
how do they stay connected to the work?
Oh, they can get connected to me through our website where I have a contact form because we do provide services to students other than just Virginia, right? The meetings are virtual now, kind of like we're doing now. So, in IDA is a federal law within the states. Of course, like they may have a little bit different terminology or tweaks or things like that, but the overall rights of the parents are the same. But so if someone wanted to reach out to me, they could go to our website and um, sign up for the a consult with me, or services overall. Or they can also email me at. Do you want me to give you the email
Please.
address? Yes. So they could email me. Well, you want the website first. So I'll give you the website first. They can come to www.adv, the number four, kids with an S, Inc.org. And they can just go to the contact form and fill that out and schedule a time to meet with me. Or they can email me at adv, the number four, again, kids@gmail.com. So those are the two best ways to reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about our services or have us do trainings, because I do trainings and presentations on this stuff. So yes, please reach out. I'd love to speak with you.
What keeps you connected to this work? Because I know that it can be exhausting and laborsome for you,
Yeah.
as well as being a parent of children that are navigating this uncertain system.
I think that for me, what keeps me connected to this work? That's a really good question. For for me, it's kind of funny. It's not funny, but it's very full circle, I'll say. Um, as a student growing up, like I told you, I had an IEP, and I had totally blocked that out of my mind. Like I forgot about what that experience was like. until, right, I had to start going to IEP meetings and doing this stuff for my own child, my oldest at that particular time. And then I realized that, dag, I'm kind of like back. It felt like I was like reliving or coming out on the other side of my experiences as a student with a disability. Um, and and even when like my oldest got old enough and he graduated, my son did graduate. He went, got an associate's degree, just real proud of him. But I think for me, there's a sense of internal healing that I'm experiencing every time I'm able to especially help a child that looks like me, that or a family that reflects me. And I didn't realize that at first because like I said, at first I like it kind of blacked out. That's right. This is who you were. And now you get to be someone to help support and make sure that somebody else has some good experiences or better yet understand some of the struggles of the child themselves, like the child I'm advocating for because I remember what it was like, even though I got good services, I remember what it was like to be that sped ed kid, to be the kid that wasn't reading on grade level and the embarrassment that came with that, the taunting from your peers that came with that, the embarrassment, all of that, wondering if you're going to be okay later in life, like all of those uncertainties and anxiety about what sped ed was, I experienced them. So in my advocacy work, I feel that I'm hope at least that I'm taking some of that off of the family and off of the child. I'm hoping that my work leaves people feeling hopeful, right? So it's like I guess a cleansing for me, a form of self-healing, I think.
I think that's beautiful and gives you the
Yeah.
opportunity to lift as you continue to climb.
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, that's pretty. Yeah, yeah.
What
Thank
is a
you.
message that you want parents to hear from you as they support or maybe begin the journey of supporting their neurodivergent scholar in the public school system?
Fight. Don't be scared to fight. Ask questions until you totally understand. Make them make it make sense to you. Don't give up. Don't be scared of the fact your child may need special education services or supports to be successful in school. Instead, if that's what your child needs, embrace it and get as much out of what the regulatory language says you have a right to for your child so they can be successful, so they can graduate, so they can go to college or trade school or live independently or whatever it is that they may want to do. Know that that's a possibility and don't let the noise, don't let that noise distract you from a path of believing that your child deserves to be respected and deserves to learn and deserves to have an opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive. So fight.
Cheryl Poe, ladies and gentlemen, Executive Director and founder of Advocating for Kids. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here and having this important conversation. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for this episode of Community Connections, airing right here on OROMIA11. As always, I am your host, Anna Orr, and I look forward to connecting again with you soon.